asking questions.
A person who's actually seen these creatures, is there anything out there that you would say pretty darn close or probably is?
That's a pretty good question.
Getting answers. The UFO Show with Aaron Moriarty starts right now on Blog Talk Radio. Be a part of the show. Phone lines are open and ready for your calls at 347-326-9505. 347-326-9505.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the UFO Show. Today, friends, we've got history to make. Let me waste no time in getting today's guest on the air. His name is Duane P. Snyder. Folks, he's discovered alien life. Duane, welcome to the UFO Show.
Thanks. Nice to be here.
Now, this is... Thank you so much. People have been waiting for this news for eons, I guess, and you're the guy that found it. Explain to our viewers, our listeners, how you found this ice meteorite.
Well, I walked out my door and checked in my mailbox, and there was a chunk of ice on the road. It had smashed on the road, and it was out of place. There had been no snow on the ground for 3 weeks. So I looked at the site, and I just picked up the 3 biggest pieces of ice. The rest was snow cone ice. It is obvious that it was an impact site. It had fell straight down and shattered like smithereens all over the pavement. I picked up the 3 ices. I put them in a plastic bag, wrapped them in a towel, and I walked around the site to really get a good view of what happened. Most of the ice was very, very small, about half size of a pea, and it was melting very quickly. So I got my ice and got it back to the freezer in my refrigerator. And then I spent 10 years trying to prove it was an extraterrestrial piece of ice.
10 years. Now, you ran into some trouble trying to get this validated over the years. What was your first big challenge that you faced?
Well, yeah, trying to figure out what was in the ice that I could use to prove it was extraterrestrial. I went to the magnetic particles first, and every time I took them out of solution and let them dry out, the irons, they would immediately oxidize and turn to dust. So I had some reports done on the water, and they were strange, but not so strange as to make it outside of the Earth. So I had a gas analysis done. Gas analysis came back as strange, no oxygen, but almost equal amounts of carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and argon. And that kind of threw me for a while because I didn't know of any planets that had that kind of atmosphere. I was hoping for Mars, but it wasn't Mars. So I didn't know anything about where to go after that. I started looking at the particles. And in 2008, NASA did a flyby of the moon Enceladus. The moon goes around Saturn, and their atmospheric gas analysis was identical to mine. And prior to that time, I was contacting a lot of different places to see if they would analyze the particles for me. And I would send it to them in vials of water, melt water, and the particles at the bottom of the vial. But eventually, one scientist last December said he didn't want to see the vial of water. He just said, you put it on a slide, send it to me, or forget it. So I put it on a slide, and I had just purchased a microscope out of a garage sale. And while I was looking on the slide, I found the sphericals, the perfectly round little particles. I knew they were the kind of things that you look like in meteorites. So I told him about it. He said he would identify those particles. So I sent them to him. And he was, as far as I was concerned, the best scientist in the world to give these particles to. Lots of experience on that stuff. Well, he eventually told me, over a period of 5 months, that they're optically clear, but they're optically unidentifiable. You need a XPS or a TOF SIMS test to do that, to identify them. And I thought he was going to do them, but he never did. And eventually he told me that he thought they were just particles from here on Earth because there were so many of them. I had 6 of them, and he thought that was a lot. So what the information I got from him, though, was I needed the time-of-flight SIMS test. So I went in on the Internet and looked up the places where I could get it contractually done for money. I found a University of Montreal in Montreal, Canada, and a lab out in Chestnut Ridge, New York, called TASCON USA Incorporated, and they did an analysis of those tests.
And what were their findings?
The analysis shows that those particles have a large number of elements in them, almost all the elements on the periodic table. All the naturally occurring elements in our universe was on them elements, each one. And that's all they said. They couldn't make an opinion or anything like that. There was this high number of elements, which means that those particles are undifferentiated. Here on Earth, you cannot find an undifferentiated particle because we've had a melt of the whole Earth, and the heavy elements sunk to the bottom and gave us an iron core. The lighter elements went to the crust, gave us our sand and rocks. The lighter elements gave us our gas atmosphere. These particles have not been differentiated. There are undifferentiated particles, which means it's extraterrestrial. You can't get it on Earth. So anything in that ice with them extraterrestrial particles are also extraterrestrial. And that's when I started melting more pieces to get more particles, and I kept running into them life forms. And it just shocked me, especially when I saw the red worm. It was just really, that's when it dawned on me what I was looking at, and that was this summer. For 10 years, I did not know I had life forms in that ice.
Wow. Hidden from everybody, including you. Wow, that's a fantastic story. Now, I remember a story years ago. A chunk of blue ice came through the top of this gentleman's house, and he thought it was a meteorite, but only to find out it was something from an airplane. Did you rule out anything like falling off a truck, maybe? I guess so,
yes,
because
we did.
These sphericals prove that it can't be terrestrial. It has to be extraterrestrial.
That's right. We ruled out every reason. I did. It was not ice from dropped cars. It was not ice from a dropped aircraft. It wasn't hail. It wasn't condensation from a refrigeration unit going down the street. It wasn't fake ice from a pond. It had oriented gas bubbles in it. It had green color. It had no earth plant debris in it. And it had no oxygen.
Did it have a smell to it?
Yeah, it smelled like water. And it tasted like
water.
It tasted very, very salty and metallic.
No, wait a minute. You tasted this?
Long time ago. I won't taste it again.
Okay. So you're probably like the only person who's actually tasted something from outer space. That's amazing.
I didn't think of that, but you probably are right.
So now, you had a press conference yesterday.
Yeah.
And I understand that a lot of the news media is very hesitant. Now, I know myself from being in this arena for a number of years now that, public and government scrutiny or lack thereof is just abhorrible. I mean, to get the government to actually take a look at this, you tried, and they kind of slammed the door in your face. Of course, now tomorrow, NASA has a big announcement the day after yours, that there, or 2 days after, that there is something about changing the way we view extraterrestrial life, some astrobiological evidence that they've got. Somewhere maybe near Saturn, which might be the same moon you're talking about.
Yes.
Now,
Enceladus
I got a
is
question.
moon in Saturn.
Right.
Go ahead.
And it's spewing out these chunks of ice all the time. Is that not right?
Yes, that's correct. They know it. NASA knows it. They got pictures of it. They provided pictures on the Internet for that.
And now, what are the rings of Saturn made out of?
Ice.
ice from that moon, right?
Yes. The E-ring especially is from the moon Enceladus. And there's a lot of salt and sodium in that.
Now, I've got a question for you. You are an expert on meteorites. How big of a chunk of ice? Well, maybe you know enough to answer this question, or
I studied
at least
it, yeah.
make a guess.
Uh-huh.
How big of a chunk of ice would it have to start off to be to get to the size where you saw it?
Well, there are studies out there that says it has to start out about the size of a big house, and by the time it hits the ground, it's about the size of a basketball. And that is the case with me. The ice that hit the ground near me was about the size of a basketball.
So it started off as the size of a big house and ended up about the size of a basketball.
Right.
So the rest burned up in the atmosphere. Of course, the burning up in the atmosphere would only burn out the outer layer of the ice, leaving the center untouched.
That's right. Uh-huh. And there is a little bit of a fusion crust.
Is there?
Yes. In one of my pictures, you can see the darker tan over the white on the crust, and you can also see the whiter surface of the fracture where it fractured off the main body. So there's a difference in color there. And originally I thought it was sand, but it never got to the sand. But anyway, as I took it out of the refrigerator and examined it more and more, that color disappeared on one piece of ice pretty well. The other one, I got a nice photograph of it.
Okay. Now, you have photographs for sale. You have photographs for sale of these, right? You have photographs for sale on the Internet of your findings.
Yes, I do. I provided them for the reporters to download, because if I gave them a press kit, it was going to be over 200 pages a piece. So I thought, well, they got, the opportunity to do that. They got an expense account. They can take it off. But I made it available to anybody.
Okay, well, I want all the scientists in the world to go onto your website and order some of these pictures so they can study them, and then pay you outrageous amounts of money to study samples. So give that website for it. Give us that website where you can get those
it's called SnyderIcyRite.com. SnyderIcyRite.com. They can go there and see all the information, and if they want the pictures or the reports, they can get them. I mean, those reports were done by scientists.
By real scientists. Now, NASA had a chance, but of course now they're going to try tomorrow to make news, but guess what? You beat them. You beat NASA.
Yeah, I didn't know they were going to do anything until after. Well, thank you. I appreciate it, yeah. I was just trying to tell the world what I found. I was very happy to see what I saw.
I think you are the reason they are making that discovery, that announcement tomorrow.
Well, I sent them a whole lot of information the past several months, all the reports and everything, and so I didn't tell them about the life forms. I was just telling them about the ice meteorite itself, because, when you start talking ice meteorite, they get a little cautious anyway, and you start saying, well, I got life, then... I told one guy in Nassau, and he scared me so bad I couldn't hardly talk. He said, if you don't shut up about talking about life forms, that you're going to have to report it, and Hazmat would come, confiscate everything I own. So I was really scared. So I moved everything away, so they're not going to find it.
So you were threatened by NASA?
Well, I felt threatened. They didn't really... to tell me that Hazmat might come, I don't know if that's a real threat. He's acting like he's being real responsible.
Well, I just hope that some of these news articles that are coming out, and this one is a big one, will be the nudge that helps our government, our secret government, to release some of the knowledge that they already know. And I'm glad that it was an average person that found it, and not some government agency. Now, I imagine that NASA and the government is looking